Oh, hello there. Yes, turned out great again. Yeah. Today, just want to talk a little bit about government news management. Obviously being quite sort of worried about the fallout on the Boris vote, it looks like the government sort of decided to do something interesting to give the newspapers to put on their front pages as opposed to that. Luckily, a British billionaire decided to go on a one-way trip to the Titanic instead. So we end up with the new DFE guidance for trans schools and trans kids. And let's take a bit of a deeper dive into exactly what's going on with that, shall we? Yes, well, in keeping with a lot of government announcements, there's nothing at all on the DFE site. We're expecting guidance, whatever that might mean, later on in the week. So we have to go with the PM pointing at things, presumably in his office. Michael Gove used to get criticism for saying that he basically made up a curriculum on the back of a fag packet, but what we now appear to have is Sunak pointing to a whiteboard which the Sun has then put things on through Photoshop, which is obviously the best way of announcing quite a serious change in government policy. Anyway, looking in more detail, let's go through the individual bullet points that there are on the aforementioned photoshopped thing. So we've got Sunak's education. Yes, here we go. Schools banned from letting kids change their gender if their parents say no. Right, good. I do like the way they've put kids there. Obviously designed, someone's decided that Sun readers will just be unable to use the word pupil or student. So this has come up in the past about potential real safeguarding issues in and around children and their relationship with their parents. Don't forget that teachers are charged with keeping children safe. It's the one thing they really have to do, but the government has decided effectively to simply throw that out of the window. So we'll have to see what detailed government guidelines there are around this, and I'm willing to bet that we might get an extra 2 lines on this, which will basically be you sort it out. Next up, competitive sport ban on kids who want to be called by another pronoun. Right, okay, children how old? Because if we magically now are worried about competitive sports between 8-year-olds, then puberty will probably not have happened, so it's not going to make any change whatsoever. Competitive sports, okay, so presumably, I don't know, what do the trans kids therefore do during competitive sports? I mean, if you really want to single kids out, that's probably quite a good way of doing it, isn't it? Next up is teachers must tell parents if their child is questioning their gender, even if the child refuses. Right, so let's imagine a scenario where the child is questioning their gender and they go and see their teacher, who's a trusted individual because they worried about their parents. Will therefore the teacher have to tell their parents? Again, interesting safeguarding question, which I imagine the government is right now working their way through all the different permutations of that one. No new preferred pronouns, he, she or they, until parents give consent. Now, I think that means that you aren't allowed to use different pronouns until parents do give a consent, which, okay, fine, on the back of everything else here. It'll be interesting, of course, in light of the other 2 bullet points that are coming up, when children do have consent from their parents. So let's move on. Kids and teachers don't have to call another pupil by their preferred pronouns. Okay, there you are then. So don't have to. Great. So a child, having jumped through these various pointing at a blank whiteboard hoops, now has to have a teacher that says, well, I ain't doing that, mate, which is always good. And heads, this is the one that I love, heads must consider the mental effects on other kids before approving gender change. Indeed. So, in other words, your potential trans child has to jump through all of these hoops, and the head must consider, think about how open and blank that word is, the effects it'll have on other kids. Supposing the other kids are trans, because that would be a plus, wouldn't it? interesting. I'm sure the DfE guidelines, if and when they actually appear, will completely clear my mind as to what I and other teachers have to do about this. I mean, this is just so unworkable and laughable if it wasn't serious. I mean, here we are. We've been saying for quite a few years now the government will bring up their own Clause 28 moment, and here it is. Basically, we're not allowed to say anything about trans, and by extension it'll be gay things to children in schools, because the guidance will be so nebulous that we won't know what to do, which of course is the whole point, because then, as we well know, children will stop being trans, because the only reason they are trans, according to the Daily Mail and quite a few others, is of course because of what teachers do. But now that won't be the case. They'll have to find something else. It'll probably be Instagram, won't it, or TikTok. Let's blame TikTok, that'll be good. And of course, we've over the last few days we've had the usual suspects. When you get someone like Lawrence Fox burning a pride flag, you have to say to yourself, this isn't really about trans issues, is it? It's not really about trans issues. What this is about is a Christian evangelical right-wing American-led attempt to do what Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida. There's all these horror stories about people identifying as cats. I mean, that's laughable for a start, apparently. But, yeah, all these horror stories about kids of 14 being told about masturbation. I mean, shock horror. A 14-year-old knowing about masturbation. That must be awful. This is a huge mission creep by this intensely authoritarian government, and they just don't care who they leave in the lurch. So I'm hoping that teaching unions will sit down with the government and demand enormously clear clarification on this one, because you can almost guarantee that any form of clarification on this will mean that the legislation is never passed. Or perhaps that's the idea. I don't know. Anyway, try and stay dry, albeit not sticky. You know what I mean with the weather. Have a nice one.